We have big breaking news from Chainlink and none other than the legend Sergey Nazarov here to discuss what's happening. We're also going to talk about all of the positive momentum for Chainlink and the crypto industry in general in Washington and beyond. Huge show today, guys. Can't wait to get into it. Let's go.
Let's go.
Good morning, everybody, to our normal viewers and, of course, to the Link Marines who are obviously here in the chat. Very excited about this conversation. Going to go on and bring Sergey on right now. Good morning, sir. How are you today?
Morning. Doing well. Good to be here.
I told you I need to, now that we're getting all Washington and serious, I need to start putting on a suit and tie when I show up, I think, for these interviews.
I mean, I think our whole industry is going towards kind of a new level of legitimacy. And so, yeah, I think that the systems and the projects that start getting mainstream adoption will have to deal with governments, institutions, the capital markets. That's just inevitable, in my opinion.
Yeah, I could not agree more. We talked about it before the show. That's definitely the direction that we're headed. So first of all, thank you so much for coming back on the show. Obviously, this is the first time we've done this live. I think our last one was recorded right after you spent some time in Washington, which we will talk about. But today, just to get right into it, there's a big news from Chainlink. We're breaking it here, obviously, first. So go ahead and do it. You just launched the Chainlink Reserve. What is the Chainlink Reserve? Break that down for us.
The Chainlink Reserve is basically the answer to the question of how does off-chain revenue relate back to the Chainlink system. So there has been a lot of adoption of Chainlink in the on-chain world, meaning DeFi. So Chainlink powers well over 65%, sometimes over 70% of DeFi, and on large and popular chains like Ethereum, over 80 or 85% of all of DeFi. And a lot of that is operated on chain, paid for on chain. And so that's the on-chain adoption of Chainlink that everyone knows very well. Increasingly over the past few years, there's been a lot of adoption of Chainlink by enterprises of various sizes. And those enterprises need to implement the Chainlink standard. They need to integrate. They need maintenance. They need support. They need all kinds of services around Chainlink to make sure that it's properly enabled as a data system, cross-chain system, identity system, privacy preserving, computation system. And so those deals, those off-chain deals, are things that people have asked us about and asked, how does this off-chain deal with this enterprise or with that enterprise, how does it relate back to the Chainlink system and to the Chainlink protocol? And that's been an open question about, how that works. So together with payment abstraction, which is the system that needed to be completed in order for the Chainlink Reserve to go and be able to go live, we are now able to convert both the on-chain revenue for paying for Chainlink services into Link and put it in the reserve. And we're able to convert the off-chain revenue. So the off-chain deal revenue for the enterprise implementation, integration, maintenance, support, services, and other capabilities also can now be converted through payment abstraction and is now starting to be put into the reserve. And this is actually just a general question for our industry in general is how do these enterprise adoption scenarios relate back to a system? And so what Chainlink is now doing is trying to make clear how those enterprise adoption implementations can relate back to the system and to the protocol, specifically the conversion of that off-chain revenue into Link, and then the usage of it for different purposes and being put in and parts of it being put in the reserve. So you end up in a place where you have on-chain revenue being converted, and you end up in a place where you have portions of off-chain revenue being converted. Which actually is, in my opinion, pretty innovative, because there's not many systems right now that have the type of off-chain revenue and adoption that the Chainlink standard has. Right now, the Chainlink standard has created hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, a substantial portion of which is off-chain revenue.
So this is actually the first time I've heard this news, just so people know. It really is breaking news to me as well. And that's huge because, as you said, there's always questions about how the real world revenue actually links to the underlying protocols for a number of projects. And I think you doing this is probably going to force a lot of others' hand to do it as well. But why did you decide to do this now and to launch this in general? It seems like it's probably been on your mind for a while. So there's a timing element here.
Yeah. So we've been building towards this for some time. We've been very clear about Chainlink's role in the enterprise adoption of smart contracts, in the enterprise capital markets adoption of the Chainlink standard as the standard for data, connectivity, identity, privacy, and really all the key operations that need to happen alongside a blockchain to make those enterprise smart contracts possible. So we've been going down that path for many years. We've in parallel been building and releasing incrementally the payment abstraction layer. So the payment abstraction layer is not something that's fully understood by as many people, but it's basically the payments processing system and the fee processing system that Chainlink has and is able to have uniquely, because you actually need all this data in order for it to work. And Chainlink has all the on-chain data for it to work. And what it does is it allows you to convert payment in various forms into link. So the payment abstraction layer is actually the automated on-chain system that converts various forms of on-chain payment for the on-chain services, and also now various forms of off-chain payment from the off-chain deal and enterprise adoption side of the equation. It can convert both of those now into a link. And then the link is used for relevant purposes like paying the nodes, going to the reserve, helping grow and improve the system and the protocol in various ways. But we reached a threshold of having the payment abstraction layer able to handle and properly process both on-chain and off-chain revenue. And then we also reached a kind of threshold in the total amount of revenue. So once we reach the hundreds of millions mark on revenue is when we decided or thought through or consulted with everybody and went in the direction of turning on the reserve, turning on these features in payment abstraction. And as a larger and larger portion of that revenue was off-chain deal revenue, it also became very clear to us that the payment abstraction layer had to handle off-chain deal revenue. And so we started building that in. But those two things coming together are really the main factors. And also, I just think it's a good time to do this with all the enterprise adoption that we see coming up.
Well, listen, to pivot, let's talk about all the adoption that's coming. Obviously, we've seen this major change in the regulatory and legislative environment, specifically in the United States. Obviously, there's a lot of tailwinds for the industry in general. Last we spoke was the week after you sat down at the White House very publicly. You met President Trump, but I know that also in the background, you've been very involved in the initiatives with the United States government. Can you talk about Chainlink's involvement on that side and yours personally?
Sure, absolutely. So we've been meeting with many senators. We've been meeting with the U.S. Treasury representatives. We've been meeting with folks from the White House, congressmen. Basically, I would say that the majority of the key folks in D.C., there are multiple records of us having meetings with the SEC together and jointly with other projects to explain certain key concepts and certain key problems that need to be solved for our industry to go to the next stage. My view, after working with multiple governments outside the US, right? So Singapore and the Monetary Authority of Singapore, we've worked with a lot. We launched a lot of stuff there last year. The Hong Kong Monetary Authority, we worked with them. We worked with other central banks, other governments. I think that's given me and our community a certain perspective on how important government endorsement of our industry is. And once we saw, and I saw the shift in the US way of thinking, we started to make a massive investment and a massive effort in order to make sure that the US government's way of thinking about this at the regulatory level, at the legislative level, at the executive level, we're all in line with what's best for our industry. And that is actually happening for two reasons. One reason is, I've been in this industry for 15 years now. I've basically devoted the vast majority of my professional career to this industry, and I want to see it reach its full potential. The other thing is that Chainlink powers so many applications now and is the market leader in so many categories, such as DeFi, parts of TradFi, and other categories, that if the industry grows by 10x, then naturally the amount of usage and the amount of adoption of Chainlink will naturally grow 10x. And so what's important there is that the legal environment is enabling both for DeFi and TradFi to go on chain, to generate high quality tokenized assets, to allow those tokenized assets to be exchanged very efficiently cross chain, to allow those tokenized assets to have proof of reserves and various other pieces of data that end up making those tokenized assets better than traditional financial assets. So maybe just to define what our goal is, and my goal is that in a few years, the blockchain version of an equity, a tokenized commodity, a tokenized fund, tokenized cash as stable coins or other forms of tokenized cash, will be viewed as superior to their traditional alternatives. So if somebody in the financial system were to ask themselves, do I want a traditional equity, a traditional commodity, or a traditional fund? Or do I want a tokenized equity, tokenized commodity, or tokenized fund? Their answer, their broker's answer, their investment advisor's answer, the asset manager's answer will be, I want a tokenized version of it if I can get it. And that's really the world that I think we are pushing towards in the Chainlink community on a very technical level, now on a very legal, regulatory, and government level, because they're open to pushing into that world. And we're trying to make it very clear that the US having a financial system that enables this is beneficial not only to our industry, but it's massively beneficial to the US, just like it would be beneficial to Hong Kong or Singapore or Dubai or these other places that are now at the moment a little bit ahead. So that message is starting to now reach the right people, and we're starting to see real movement towards the type of government endorsement that is necessary for this mass adoption that we all say we want. That'll change the nature of our industry, but I think if we want mass adoption, our industry will have to become more about tokenization and kind of eating up the global financial system. Then it will be about just cryptocurrencies or NFTs or any number of other tokenized things that aren't part of the traditional financial system.
What you just described was once viewed as crazy talk inside our echo chamber, that any of these things were possible, that we could actually see a world where everything is tokenized and trades and transacts on chain. In the last few months, the velocity of news that makes that a real possibility has been astounding. We obviously just have Project Crypto from the SEC, where literally Paul Atkins said, we're going to take everything on chain. You have the chairman of the SEC saying that our goal is to do exactly what you just said. We have the CFTC, which is the other regulator that would handle, obviously, some of crypto on a crypto sprint right now and talking about all the huge announcements that they're going to make. We already have the stablecoin bill. So with all of that in mind, are we in a sort of Goldilocks moment right now to make this happen? Because we all know that like regulators change and legislation changes and presidents change. It feels like right now is the time to strike while the iron's hot and push this narrative and have the tech ready to actually deliver. Are we there?
Yeah, I think we're there. I think when the chairman of the SEC says things like that publicly in a very authoritative, committed way, I mean, these people measure their statements very carefully. We've been talking to them in multiple meetings, explaining the benefits of on-chain finance, and explaining the benefits of getting all these things tokenized in the right way, and how it actually creates a superior level of risk management for the market in general, for society, for everyone. So I was very, very happy to see that. I think now is definitely the time. The next 6, 12, 18, 24 months are the critical time when I think the government adoption and endorsement will allow this type of acceleration by institutions that'll bring in huge amounts of capital, huge amounts of users that previously couldn't access tokenized things. I think you'll see an influx of stablecoin issuance from the new stablecoin bill. So I expect stablecoins to go from 200 or 300 billion to 2 or 3 trillion. I expect to see a tokenization of equities, commodities, funds. I'm not sure exactly in what order that'll happen. Right now, funds are the leader. Equities are coming very quickly, but realistically, commodities could show up very quickly. So it's hard to even predict, which of those is gonna be the booming category. Right now, it is funds. And then when you have the payments, right? So when you have the on-chain cash for payment in the form of stable coins, and you have the tokenized asset from the sell side, so the thing that's going to be bought in a transaction, now you have a place to create markets, right? Now you have a place to create multi-trillion-dollar markets. And I think what people will see when you have markets of sufficient size working on chain for these tokenized funds, equities, commodities, is they will see a massively superior financial system. They will see massively superior clearing and settlement. They will see massively superior collateral management. They will see massive levels of previously unseen transparency and risk management. They will see, things that were not possible before become possible overnight because they've been trying to build and fix the traditional financial system infrastructure for 40 years. And there's only so much you can optimize a system. So you can only squeeze out another 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5% of optimization from a system that was built or designed 30 years ago, and you've been trying to polish for 30 years. Yeah. But this system is a completely new system. And so at launch, you get a 40, 50, 100% increase. And then as you polish the system and you get it more aligned with what everybody wants, you probably get to multiple improvements over the current system. So the thing that hasn't happened yet is you don't have enough cash on chain. You don't have enough tokenized assets on chain to create those markets. And so the traditional financial system and the world hasn't seen why on-chain markets and on-chain finance is better. But once they, like the DeFi people have seen it, you've seen it, I've seen it.
Of course.
But once the rest of the world sees it, that's when we'll reach that point of, do I want a traditional equity, traditional commodity, traditional fund, or do I want a tokenized equity, tokenized commodity, tokenized fund? I get 24/7, 365 markets. I get collateral management 24/7 instead of 21/5. I get better risk management with more data about the underlying asset through proof of reserve oracles. I get global liquidity through cross-chain connectivity. I get automated compliance through identity oracles. I think I'm going to go with the tokenized thing. I think the tokenized thing is faster, cheaper, has more liquidity, and it's better in 5 other ways that I care about. That's what I think this will lead to, and that's what we're working on.
It's an incredible point because, as you said, it makes the market, but you touched on some of the other reasons it's so important. I mean, what then comes is having all of your assets in a single place and being able to use them as collateral, as wealthy people do with their securities portfolios now. And we're almost traveling down 2 parallel paths. And I think the one you described is going to win. We've had announcements recently, Charles Schwab saying they're going to add, Bitcoin and Ethereum spot trading, but then they're going to treat those assets as part of your portfolio when it comes to collateral and lending. And then JP Morgan very quickly following up and saying that they're looking at doing the same. So it's almost a race in my mind. I don't know if you view it that way, but we have the sort of traditional finance trying to bring crypto into the package and into the platforms they're used to. And we have you and others building things where you're going to be able to opt out of that entirely and do it in a better way. Do you see it that way?
Yeah, it's absolutely a race. It's absolutely a race. And this is what we've been saying for years, that there is going to be an inherent level of competition among financial firms to provide the best financial products on chain. And that is going to be the way that this industry goes mainstream. And that is indeed what's happening now. And you're going to see the traditional financial systems try to keep up with some of the properties and guarantees of the on-chain financial products, but they fundamentally won't be able to because of how much needs to be changed. And the ability to change how something works on the back end does create completely new user experiences. So the final beneficiary of all this, really, as we've said before, is society, right? So society, through competition and capitalism, gets better and better things, gets better and better versions of whatever it's willing to pay for. And I do think society is still willing to pay for financial products. I think now they're going to want to pay for financial products that are transparent, that have high yield from DeFi, that can be controlled through private keys, that have automated compliance through identity oracles and compliance oracles, that have access to global liquidity instead of local liquidity through cross-chain connectivity to various jurisdictions. These are going to be the new minimums and the new standards that the financial system and financial products need to meet. And it'll really just be a much better outcome for the consumer, whether that's the retail consumer or the institutional consumer. So it's really something where everyone benefits, which is why I've been a big believer in it for so long.
So all of that is 100% true. And I think that many forget, and I'm speaking as an American where we have access to all these things, that it also just opens access to these markets and these assets that doesn't exist in most parts of the world. I mean, we're seeing tokenized stock trading launched on a number of platforms. It's not even available to Americans, but it's allowing people all over the world that otherwise couldn't to buy Tesla stock and buy Amazon and to even get access to these things in the first place, right?
Yeah, that's a whole other level of this that I'm personally very excited about. It's one of the things that personally excites me the most. Just like you had a period where information was very scarce, and now everyone has a $50 Android phone at least, where they can access the same Wikipedia page I can access. And they never had a library in their village or in their town, but they have an Android phone where they can read a Wikipedia page. Or they never had a landline, but they have mobile connectivity for phone calls. You have this kind of leapfrogging effect, where the technologies that get polished and built up in the developed economies can hit the emerging markets with massive force, massive life-changing force, right? Where before it was difficult to get a book, now you have access to the internet and all its knowledge. Before it was difficult to communicate, now you have a mobile phone where you could call people at any time, anywhere. And now that's going to happen to people's financial lives. So I already see a lot of stablecoin adoption all over the world, in Asia, in Latin America, because the local banking infrastructure there can't give them a reliable way to save money. I think that this will actually be the most humanitarian and utilitarian aspect of our industry, in that it will do for the rest of the world what the developed world has already had for years, which is the ability to save money, the ability to spend money to grow a business, the ability to loan and borrow money to grow an enterprise, the ability to manage risk in regards to your enterprise and your capital, which are actually critical determining factors for how a society develops, the levels of crime, the levels of all these problems that exist because you don't have, sufficient economic systems to allow people to build businesses and engage in capitalism the right way. So this is what I'm actually very personally excited about. I've been excited about it since the beginning of the Bitcoin kind of thing. Back then, actually, when I was getting into Bitcoin initially, one of the key ideas was microtransactions for the emerging markets, which even then attracted me to the industry. So I think this will have massive implications for the developed markets in the global financial system. It'll have even larger implications for the emerging markets, just like the internet and just like mobile communications completely have changed people's lives there.
So all of that in mind, agreeing that we're in this Goldilocks zone where we have incredible tailwinds, how do you then plan for 25, 26, 2027? What do you build and focus on? What's coming from Chainlink, knowing that this is the time to make it happen?
Chainlink as a platform and as a set of standards is in a really unique position, actually, that it's been getting put in for a number of years by the community, by our users, by all the people building Chainlink. Basically, in our industry, you have platforms that manage private keys. You have blockchain platforms, which are the clearing and settlement platforms, and the platforms where you write the conditions of the contract. And then you have oracles and oracle networks, which is the thing that Chainlink basically pioneered and invented, oracle networks. These oracle networks have now expanded through Chainlink beyond data into cross-chain connectivity, identity, compliance, privacy, a lot of very important, actually really critical pieces of transactions. So what Chainlink, I think, has done and will continue to do even more in 25, 26, 27, and beyond is build critical standards and critical infrastructure that allow these transactions to happen. For example, yesterday I was speaking virtually at a conference in Rio about our work with Banco Inter and the Central Bank of Brazil, where we did with them a tokenization of soy, and then the cross-chain transaction of that tokenized soy over to Hong Kong. And that required cross-chain connectivity, data, various forms of workflow management, some amount of identity and compliance. All of those various complicated building blocks at this point can't exist and work without Chainlink. You have ways to do them that will take months. In Chainlink, it has now been boiled down to a highly repeatable system and set of processes that take days. And the Chainlink runtime environment is actually the thing that I think should take it down from days to hours. And so I hope that with the Chainlink runtime environment, you won't just have all the data, all the connectivity, all the identity, all the compliance, all the privacy capabilities that you need for your transaction to happen on chain. But you'll also have a way to compose all that in an hour or two, just like it takes you an hour or two to write code for traditional finance or Web2 finance or fintech applications. And if we can provide all those critical building blocks, and we can provide an environment where you compose those critical building blocks into a single efficient piece of code that will be defined as this new type of enterprise next generation smart contract, then I think we will be in a whole different world of both DeFi growth and enterprise and institutional adoption.
Well, I know that we are at time here. I just want to thank you for obviously choosing to break this news here, but man, I hope that they're listening to you. And I'm glad that we have people like you sharing visions like that with the people that can actually make decisions for once, because you're incredibly articulate and a great spokesperson for this industry and what can be built, man. Thank you so much for that.
It's my pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for
having me. Amazing announcement. And we're going to get out of here. I'll be back tomorrow, obviously, with the Friday Five. Once again, thank you to Sergey. Thanks to all of you who decided to join and listen. And I know who will listen back. We will see you guys tomorrow. Sergey, hope to have you again soon. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
That's dope.